Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Soul and Grace podcast. You should already know me by now, but if you don't, I'm your host, Danielle. And first of all, let me just say hello and welcome back to my future listeners. This week's episode is probably gonna be a little long. Sorry, not sorry. It's not a simple subject or topic, but we gotta get into it. Also, there is something else that I just wanted to go over because I was listening back to some of my episodes and what? Maybe it's just these, I don't know, these little hiccups I may have with myself. Maybe they're not really, but it's like hiccups other people have had in the past, and it's like they just can't believe that is really how I am. But y'all, I am naturally just upbeat and loving. Okay, I'm a Cancer, so I'm a nurturer. I got I want to help. I want to help all the time, but I also am just like a social butterfly, very bubbly, just happy. Literally just happy. It's literally in my charts if you're into all of the stars and moons stuff. Plus, I'm really just loving life right now and feeling real happy, soulful. So my energy is high. Please don't be offended by that, because for some reason that is something that bothers people who, no offense at all, but people who are not happy, or it just seems like they can't understand that you can get to a place in life where shit is all right. Like you're kind of just satisfied. You may not have it all together or have all the things, or you want more things, but shit is really okay, outside of the things that we think we need. And for whatever reason, people like that see happy people, instead of them asking how they got there or, what keeps them happy, I don't fucking know what you can ask. But before you get jealous and think that person is fake, I'm just trying to think of all of the things. Fake, too happy, too cheery, acting like a white person, which is wild because not y'all future listeners, but the white people will say you act like a white person because or just your vocabulary is all right. Like, it don't even have to be, you're not even saying big ass words. You just don't have you don't have that other je ne sais quoi about your tone or whatever. But y'all know who I'm talking about, because some people have dealt with that. I know one of the people that I've dealt with that for a long time. Hell, even my best friend, who is not like a bitter person or anything, but she always tells people, like, when she met me in high school, like, at first she didn't like me because she didn't understand how, then would call me bougie. It's like, girl, we all in goddamn seniors struggling. What the fuck? But I don't know. I've just always known, like, what I wanted, whatever. I'm fortunate enough to come from good parents and a good family. And I think that just has a lot to do with it as well. But yeah, so if you hear that, or you are like listening to the first or third or whatever episode and you're like, why? It's natural. Sorry. And plus, just like with the state of the world right now, it's like, we know that shit, just being an American right now, like, some people are fighting for their lives and survival right now. We know that, that exists. We know that evils exist. Things out of our control exist. But the one thing we can control is how we react and respond to things, and how we control the energy that we put out. So, yeah, please don't hate me, y'all. I'm just happy. You should be happy too. Find things to be happy about. And that's what Soul and Grace is all about. I wanted to focus on some good. Self is good. Self-love is good. Happiness is good for self. So let's focus on it. Wherever you are in this moment, I hope you are having a wonderful rising day or evening, winding down and having a moment to yourself, loving on you. You got your juice, you got your wine, you got something good. You know what I mean? Even if you're hiding in your closet right now, just trying to get a break. I hope that you are getting a chance to love on you. It's funny I'm saying that because I've really had the minimal time to do that for myself, but I am here today recording, so I get to do that. I got my water, I got my wine today, just because, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Really, I just wanted to, it's like, I haven't had a glass of wine in a minute. Hold on. I had a bottle. Hold on. And just honestly, wine is like, today's topic is like, very, I don't know. It's like, in a way, if you romanticize this episode, nothing's wrong with that, because it should only give you the answers that make it easier to romanticize your future for yourself. But yeah, so today we are going to talk about soul and ego, or soul versus ego, and navigating the differences between the two. These two words play different parts in who we are, but if you do not know how to identify which is which, or what roles the two play in our lives or in your being, as far as your being goes, then you're probably going to struggle with self-discovery. Point blank, period. Because it's almost like one of the first steps you should take, but then also we don't know how to. So that's what this episode is about. But before we hop into that, let's get into this week's, Lord Jesus. I only had a little sip of this wine and I'm not even feeling it, but my words already jumbling up. But, like I said, let's jump into this week's Gotta Have It. And yeah. Let's jump into this week's Gotta Have It. So I know. It seems like every week I'm bringing you something that is a supplement or something like that. And I know that is a little uncomfortable sometimes, because it's just like, oh, another supplement. Oh my God, I already got to take this, and this. I got 3 different magnesiums, all of this shit, right? No, it's not the case. Honestly, if I just would put anything on the table now, most of the supplements I am sharing are things that I have been experimenting with the last few months, and I do find very, very, very valuable to this journey of mastering self. So it's not just crap. I don't get any money off of it. I'm not an influencer. I'm not trying to influence you. I am simply sharing what has actually worked for me, and I do understand it may not work for you. As far as like when I share herbs and stuff like that, I am currently pursuing becoming a master herbalist. So, even it's not even that I'm sharing what I'm learning, because any of us have if you have the will and the curiosity and all of that, one, you could just go pick up a book, go to the library, use Google, whatever. There's plenty of information out there. Some things I just kind of make it easier for my ladies, because if you are looking for things, especially with winter right around the corner, especially if you're looking for things to fight, what is it called? Goddamn, winter depression. That's not what it's called, but it'll come to me in a second. But you know what I mean? Just that terrible ass feeling you get during the winter, and you don't want to do nothing, but you still have to show up for yourself every day. So I'm mostly going to be sharing things like that, because again, if it does not work for me or something like that, that's okay. I may still recommend it here and there for people that may seem to need, have the needs that meet that herb or something, it's always worth trying. But honestly, if it's something that may not work, I might not always share, just because, again, all of us are different, and you can go find these things yourself and maybe it benefits you. You know, again, with more knowledge, books, and positive results, I will share what works. We need more people advocating for natural, more natural resources, as far as the information that is out, but also just like the reminder. I can't think today, but it's like, do I need to finish this wine? Maybe not. But anyways, I don't gotta sip it. I got my water right here. But yeah, we need more people advocating for, they're not even alternatives, because the plants that have been here on this earth are not new. They are not fads. They're not a part of fad diets or anything like that. Like, these things were already put here for us, and we should know how to use them. It's much cheaper than constantly going to the doctors, and they're doing a case by case, or not even case by case, but more so, they're just going off of they are going off of a one size fits all type of thing, or trial by error, better yet, is definitely a better way to put it. But again, plants are not alternatives. These synthetic alternatives are the alternatives, and they're just getting people hooked on them. They're not really doing anything. Even if it's not something that is a stimulant, your body is still going to get hooked on it, and guess what? You're still not healed in the end. But as y'all can see, I kind of hesitated to go into that, because I could talk about that all day, but I'm not going to give that my attention to that. But please note, the plants are the originals, the original OGs, okay? The ones that set the standards and, this godlike image to the shit that they are trying to recreate in our labs, that sometimes is beneficial, but most of the time it's not. But yeah, let me not get too deep into that, because the layers of the medical system, the layers of that topic are crazy. We could be here talking about that for hours and hours, but we're not. Anyways, this week I would like to talk about the wonderful herbal tincture that I've been taking. It is called let me look at it, the Good Mood. I don't know why I always thought it was like mood or something, but it's the Good Mood herb drops. I've been taking them for June, July, August, September, 6 months. Wow. Lord Jesus. That is a long time, but this blend of herbs works so well, literally. And give me 1 second, let me list off, let me tell you what's in it. I was hesitating to do this because it's like, I should not really recommend, maybe I won't do it. The tincture is called the Good Mood herb. If you follow us on Instagram, I'll have it posted up there by the time this episode posts. And it'll go more into detail on that. Anyways, whenever you hear a recommendation for something, especially herbs, look into it yourself. Most of the time with stuff like this, because it is a store-bought item, it's not something I made by myself, you should always look into it. But they've already figured out the dosing and all of that, so just follow the amount that it tells you to take on the bottle and you should be just fine. But literally, another reason I've been on this search for like the perfect happy herbs that are not Mary Jane is because it just becomes time consuming. And yeah, for so long it was fun rolling up and just participating in all of those things, but Now it's like, that takes time. I don't really have that time, if I'm being completely honest. And the things that life is calling me to are just like, you just don't have time for that. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, how can I go about this without completely shocking the hell out of my system? Find other happy herbs. Remember I mentioned Damiana? That's one that you can inhale as well, but I don't really use that one. I prefer the tincture, because if you take a few drops of that, you will feel very relaxed and nice. Maybe sleepy, but as far as the good mood, it energizes you, makes you feel good, and you can take it about 3 times a day. So especially if you work in the corporate world, where you are either doing any corporate job shit, just where you have to be around other people and have to cater to people all day, or you have to cater to coworkers, whether that's in person or virtual, remotely, whatever. Check this out. It's amazing. Downside, it comes in a little bottle, so you might need a new one every 2 weeks, but it works really well. I usually it's like my tongue trying to fly out my mouth, Lord Jesus. I usually feel like, uplifted after 30 minutes of taking like 2 droppers full of it, because it doesn't fill all the way up, of course, like all little droppers, but take 2 of those and you should be fine. It's not a high feeling, but you can feel your mood being uplifted. In today's environment, you just need that to keep you sane and just on top of things, or at least just make it through what you need to, and you can move on in a happier mood. Even if it's not a personal battle or personal experience, it's shit around us constantly going on that can just drain your body in every way. People, places, things. People, places, and things can drain you. The thoughts of things can drain you. I feel like this tincture helps with that, along with the other ones that also help with keeping you calm. Like, I'll pair this with my Damiana, and also with my holy basil, which is also another one. There's plenty of herbs that can help you kind of just bring it down mentally, and uplift you mentally, I guess, or just your vibe. So maybe more so uplift you physically in a whole, because again, I really like it. I would highly suggest it. But yeah, so I'm looking at my clock like, did we spend too much time there? But it happens. It's not simple. It happens, But let's go ahead and hop into today's show. So, as I mentioned a few moments ago, or minutes ago, really, I guess at this point, about 20 minutes ago, today's topic has so many layers to it. I tried to sum it all up, at least the basics anyways, into a 90-minute show, which should be a 90-minute show. I just scripted all my information, so hopefully I can keep it that way. Personally, I always enjoy long podcasts because they're really good to listen to when I'm walking, but I do know that's not for everybody, so hopefully this is not one that I have to chop up into what seems to be 90 minutes, because there's so much good information. Now, soul versus ego. Having an understanding of what these roles play saves us so much time and wasted energy in life. Seriously. Understanding then leads to better actions, understanding, and execution. But what do these words mean? What is their importance to my future? Because I know that is so important to so many people. Like, sometimes the journey is not worth it because they can't even imagine what the reward is at the end of it all. And really is never an end, because it's just like, once you do get the information, you're constantly working on applying it to your life, and just shit is not always, it's just not always good. So Yeah, but if you can identify these two and can tell the difference when they are speaking to you, you should be able to walk through life just a little bit better and at least understand yourself and the decisions you make and the decisions you make that involve people in your life or whatever. It should just help with all those things. So yeah. What is their importance to future self? Soul. What is soul? Because I know we're not talking about music. Ego. What is ego? Again, we're not talking about music. Because I don't know why, but, Beyonce had a hit with that one. I got a big ego. Hey. It was about back then. It's not that though. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about ego in a bad light, because I do know that when you hear someone they got a big ego, they got a bad ego, sometimes we are thinking of the negative things that come with the word ego, and we think of stuck up. Like, we just think of all the wrong traits or parts of the words that are really not that they don't really have that much to do with the word or the spiritual meaning of ego. So yeah, let's find that together. Let's define these things together so that we never have to struggle with them or struggle with understanding them or struggle with using them to our best abilities, right? So yeah, soul, we'll start with that because, hello, this is a podcast called Soul and Grace, and in my first episode, I think it's the first one, I went over those things and what it means to me, some other definitions of it, because there are many others depending on what, not what phrase, but what form or whatever way that you want to use these words, right? So yeah, your soul is the intangible life force energy that gives you life to your physical form and exists in and around the human body. When your soul leaves the body, the life force leaves too, and the body dies, which I'm sure even if you never have had a close a death in the family or anything like that, you've at least, you get the idea of, these things leave the body dies. There's nothing left with that body. The soul then goes away and, maybe it finds another body. I don't know. What do you believe in? Before we move on to soul and we get deep into this episode, I really would just like to throw in a reminder that if you are listening to this in the sense of hoping that it will fix your life, it's not going to. These are simply defining, and please remember that my goal with Soul and Grace is not to, I am a healer in my own ways and all of those things, but it's not to fix your life, because I can't fix your life. Only you can kind of fix your life. And I hate to burst the bubble of life being fixed. It's just all about balance. It's all about balance and understanding the differences between the soul and the ego. Being able to learn how to listen to each one will at least guide and help you through this journey. I'm walking through it too. Like I said, I've done a lot of research on this as far as just being able to distinguish the two. And there are new things that I've learned that, I'm sharing here and also practicing in real life. So this is somewhat self-help, but more so just like we're all getting an understanding together so that we can incorporate these things and this knowledge into our lives and into our lives and our routine so that we can get to where we want to be. But yeah, just want to say that. So let's go back into this. Your soul is not your physical body, nor is it the thoughts, emotions, or physical sensations you experience. Your soul is the one experiencing them. So, all that goes on to say, really all I took from that when I was looking into this is just like, okay, if, just like when you hear people say that, a kid has an old soul or something, it's mostly because or mainly because they see a kid doing something that should seem very unfamiliar to them, but for some reason they know how to do it. They know how to do it properly, or they're very good at it. It's almost like they're natural when it comes to it, but that is because it's not the body, it's the soul that is imprinting these moments and lessons and actions into its memory. Your soul is the internal observer and the one experiencing your physical life. Your soul is the aspect of you that understands oneness. Your soul is the aspect that understands why your higher self created you and your purpose for being here. Your soul is you. Point blank period. That's the best way to put it. Your soul is you. And note that your soul is not the physical you. It's the inner you. It's the spirit that you have. It's not these tangible things that are on the outside. Now, let's get into ego. The ego is a sense of self and identity created in our minds. So no, it's not the Beyonce song. It's not the Beyonce song, as much as we want it to be. Again, a true bop, if there ever was one. The thoughts and beliefs and ideas about who and what we are repeatedly in our minds. When Lord Jesus, when you want to just start making up words and you took the notes. You took the notes. Why are you making up words and you took the notes? Lord Jesus. The imagination is trying to run wild. But the thoughts, beliefs, and ideas about who and what we are repeatedly in our minds, and when we begin to think it is true because it's constantly in our mind. The ego is based on our three-dimensional perception and our experience, interpretation of the external world. We use the external world to compare and contrast ourselves against other people, concepts, and things, which is a major no-no, but let me keep reading my notes for y'all. We form a picture about ourselves. The ego uses physical forms as external references when we move about the world and live our lives. It is constantly recalibrating our position in the world and level of safety in relation to those on the outside. It speaks to us to let us know, and it is the ego. Just want to say that. Ego speaks to us to let us know when we are at risk. We need to experience ourselves as separate to keep ourselves safe. This is the role of the ego. The ego is the aspect of you that exists to help us in a world of physical separation and individuality. The ego is the aspect of you that understands separation, matter, and energy in physical form. So, if I had to sum that up for you, if you didn't want the notes from my textbook definition, to give a personal reference, I would give, or not a personal reference, but like a more so real life example, because again, if you found this podcast, you either are super new to these topics or you're looking for a better understanding and hoping that it is a self-help, give you all the answers thing, right? But we're not a self-help thing. We are a together help. Together help is what I'm going to call that. The best way, what's the best, like, relatable, something that we've all experienced the same, to kind of compare ego to. Simply as just saying, like, us using the external world to compare and contrast ourselves against people, concepts, and things. Yeah, that is, when you're scrolling through social media and you're comparing what you don't have, or seeing things that you don't have, or thinking you can do things that you see other people doing. Just this idea of perfection, that is ego. The thoughts, or I guess the mental struggles, that comes from ego sometimes. I know that can be a lot deeper on different levels, because there's so many things that they've discovered nowadays that play into our makeup as far as the mental goes, or like mental illness can be passed to your babies, and all those things. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, it's the idea of perfection is what I get when I think of ego, because you almost have to literally calm your mind when it comes to certain things, to just like literally make you feel better. So that's usually ego talking on those negative thoughts. Sometimes it's even telling you, like I just said a second ago, just like, I think ego will have you convinced you can do something that someone else can do. And I'm not talking about the basic things, but the challenging things, like, or thinking because you see someone else. I guess the more, one of the examples that's coming to my mind has to do with the fashion world, because if you didn't know, I do have a clothing company. But the first thing I think of is like the bigger Chinese, I don't mean anything by that, but these bigger fast fashion companies that steal from smaller business owners and smaller designers. And maybe sometimes they're not even smaller designers, but these companies are just trying to find cheaper ways and quicker ways to produce the same things that these smaller audience, we'll say that, smaller audience creatives put out. And I feel like that's a great example of ego, because who is telling them that they can just do that and they make a lot of money off of it, and these designers make nothing? That I feel like that's a more, for me, that's a relatable thing. But in your everyday life, the person that's listening, maybe your average Joe, in the sense of you work, you have a regular 9 to 5, you have this, I'm gonna say basic, but I do not mean basic in the sense of like it has nothing special about it. I mean basic, and it's a very well-known routine that never changes. But you just live a regular everyday life. You don't ever really take the chances to go after things because you don't see it as a need to. But yeah, the things that keep people in those places might be ego in some cases, that tells them, oh no, you can never do that, you can never get outside of this, so just master this or whatever. Ego is going to keep you in a, I don't want to say it'll keep you, because again, how do you use your ego? How are you listening to your ego? So we'll just dive into that. But again, the ego is the aspect of you that understands separation, matter, and energy in a physical form. And then just to touch back on soul, your soul understands the higher form of you that is not physical, and it focuses more on the wholeness of you. So soul is more wholeness of self. Ego is wholeness of outside self. Okay? Now that's my that is the Soul and Grace dictionary version of that. Soul is higher self. Ego is outside physical form of self. Now, oh Lord, I just changed my screen. Okay, now you're probably wondering, how do you spot the difference? Because even though you just got the definition of what the two of them are, you still might not understand. So now we're going to talk about the differences and how you can tell the difference between the two. With the cooler weather comes allergies, I guess. And if you cannot tell or not already, my voice keeps going up and down, and I don't know why. It was sunny earlier, now it looks like it's gonna rain or something, but it's chilly, all of that. I don't know what's going on. But let's just learn the differences. So, the ego and the soul both speak to us, but in different voices. Now, let me just state this. When I say that the ego and the soul speak to us, but in different voices, I am not saying you're going to actually hear voices. If you are actually hearing voices, you may need to go talk to somebody. Especially if they're saying or telling you to do some crazy things. You probably need to go get checked, and that's okay. When we learn to recognize these two voices, we can determine when, how, and why we need to respond to each. And respond, I take that as more as in this moment is what I've noted. Respond means listen and to act on. So, with the actions after that, right? Now, the ego speaks the language of physical realm, separation, and matter. The soul speaks the language of the energetic, ethereal realm, oneness, and whole. So already right there, they're on two different times. Honestly, they on two different times. Because if we're gonna be completely honest, the ego is always on demon time. And I don't mean in the literal sense of a demon, but in the fire. I feel like the ego always puts fire under your ass, because if it's not telling you you're not enough or you can't do something, it's telling you, yeah, you could do that and you could do it better. What you gonna do? Or it's constantly making you feel like you haven't done enough when you have done enough. So yeah, the ego uses words like I and me, and is focused on the well-being of the individual and self. The soul uses words, such as we, us, and is, because it's focused on the well-being of whole, or the well-being of being whole and the well-being of self, all of those things. So already ego and soul are two different things. One is focusing on who you are, and one is focusing on who you are on the outside, not on the inside. Or its ego is not focused on operating in higher self. It's more so operating is not what the operating as, operating for others, operating for things around you, all of those things. Soul is operating for you. It's rooting for you. Ego is rooting for you to shit on everything in its existence. That is my what's the one, not the Hood dictionary, but my Black Webster dictionary of the two. The ego is subjective and the soul is objective. The ego is intelligent and the soul is wise. that statement. I am gonna put all the links to, or at least some of them that I got a lot of my notes reference from, but this right here was just like, okay, the ego is intelligent and the soul is wise. The ego is intelligent and the soul is wise. That. And then I start to question, like, okay, why? Why is one deemed as wise and one is deemed as intelligent? Because in the everyday world, shit, if you one of those, you're doing just fine. Well, the ego comes from the perspective of our physical body and sees the world through these limited filters of physical sensation, thought, and emotion, and a single experience, so your personal experiences. The soul comes from the higher self's perspective, observing from a distance without the filters of the individual human body and connected to the wisdom of source. I feel like I should read that again, but I ain't. Not. But if the ego is constantly focusing on the physical, whereas the soul is focusing on higher self and what was already, instilled into it upon reaching the body that it's, headed to, that's crazy. And then the fact that soul is connected to source, meaning for me, when I read that, it's just like, okay, that's why we get the downloads or uploads, whatever you want to call it. That's why we get that, or those thoughts. That's soul. And that's higher self kind of asking you, like, are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? You sure you want to do that? I don't know. Where ego, again, is probably going to tell you, just do it. Just do it. You'll do it. Or you can't do it, and ego is keeping those experiences in mind, but if they're not good, ego is like, oh, I'm never doing that again. So now, of course, it's like, well, so should I only focus on my soul? Why does ego, like, why do I even need an ego? If higher self is my soul, why am I focused on ego? Because just like anything, there's always some fine print, okay? Why are both needed? The physical realm is based on polarity or duality, whichever one. They both mean, two different, they're on two different wavelengths, damn near. The experience of the physical realm depends on your position or perspective at any time in relation to a spectrum of opposites. The experience, polarity, which if you don't know what that is, look it up. But polarity, they're on two different sides of the pole. Polarity exists to help us understand the difference between the separation of the physical and the oneness of the ethereal. In the physical realm, our soul helps us know oneness. The ego helps us know separation. We are two opposite aspects of the spectrum, and we are experiencing two opposite ends of the spectrum at once. Everything coexists all together. The ego develops to help differentiate between you and other physical realms. The ego's voice tells us there is something in the physical realm to pay attention to. It warns us when the physical body is at risk or danger. Let me take a water 1 second. Now, it's going to sound a little jumpy, but I refuse, because sometimes these mics just pick up all the information. The sound, they just pick up the sound. And I don't really want that today, so. Now, the soul, that's a soul. The soul exists as part of everything. The soul's voice tells us where we need to be going to align with our purpose and reason for being here. It warns us when we are at risk of moving off track from our intended path. At this point in time, like for me, I'm sure we've all had that. And even if you don't listen to what after, going through all of this for weeks of research and everything, I'm just realizing like that is how you end up on that hamster wheel, fighting against self and your higher self's needs, desires, wants, no matter how uncomfortable they are. And that's a whole nother topic. Jesus, that's another topic, because self is not easy. We're not easy. We're not simple, and that's okay. We're not meant to be that. But we'll dive into that another time. Suppose, we rely just on the ego and ignore or eliminate connection to or awareness of the soul. So you stop listening to your soul. In that case, we will exist purely in separation and individuality, which a lot of people are already, even if they got people around them, they're just walking in individuality and not in the sense of knowing that they are individual, more so in a cocky, very vulgar, very loud and proud way. We don't want that at all, but that's what you'll operate in. So people like that are simply operating in ego, and you probably know 3 people like that right now, and you just didn't know what that was called. Now you know. The truth is, in human form, we are both separate and whole. We have to learn balance. We have to learn how to balance the two. If you can't balance ego and soul accordingly, then you're only going to be operating out of one. And you're probably thinking, well, if you said soul has to do with higher self, why is that a bad thing? I'm only operating in that. Because honestly, it just keeps you out the loop of life and experiences. So yeah, let's dive into why they matter together. The soul and the ego come from polar ends of the spectrum. So they're on 2 different sides of the spectrum. They are both necessary. Balance is, I don't know. I never even thought to see if like balance have anything to do with that, with like just 2 things or whatever. Because so many things can be all balanced that don't require multiple areas of it to be off balance, if that makes any sense. But yeah, both need to be acknowledged and heard. The ego trap is that the ego becomes dominant at the expense of the soul and the whole. The ego tells us that we are separate and individual. We are alone. Only we create our reality, and we must rely on ourselves. You have to. Acknowledgement of our physical separation is a means of keeping us safe. The ego can push the physical condition of separation into an adverse and detrimental perspective for basic safety. Unchecked, so if you don't get your ego in line, ego can isolate us by telling us we are the only ones who can do what we need to be done. We cannot rely on anyone else. We are alone. The ego can enhance separation and detach each of us from the whole or oneness. This pushes us toward low density consciousness and low vibrations. Like I said a few minutes ago, we all know some people like that. We just didn't know what the fuck to call that. Now you know. That is someone that's solely operating off of ego. Simply. When we focus only on the individual and the self, we fail to see the truth of oneness and from where we came. So you just you're going to lose sight of what really matters. Sometimes I really just came to the conclusion that some of us come into the world maybe we just come into the world with ego. So we really just don't even understand what oneness and wholeness actually is. And when you think like, okay, if a soul just leaves a body and the body is lifeless, there's nothing. It's just a body. that make a lot of sense. Like an ego that was already operating from ego, coming into a new body, new form, new little baby form. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Because sometimes, like, especially as a doula, like, you really just being around kids, you've seen it. I hate to say it, and I hope I don't run anyone off, but sometimes y'all babies come in and they already got attitudes. They already have these ways about them, because again, it's already instilled in them, because their soul just either left another body, or soul has all the answers. So maybe they're coming in just thinking, I already know all the answers. Shit, just get me out of diaper and I'll be good. But so yeah, the soul and higher self can focus only on oneness in the whole at the expense of the individual and physical self. We can end up becoming powerless and somewhat of a victim, waiting for others, someone, or something else. I'm not even gonna take a break there, because we all have experienced this, whether we know someone or we've experienced it ourselves. You know exactly what these words mean, what they're referring to. You've experienced it. And if you haven't, good for you. We lose sight of our power and the need to take action and create in the physical realm. We came from the ethereal realm of energy into the physical to experience polarity. To ignore the polarity of the ego is to defeat the purpose of being here. When we focus only on oneness, we fail to see the polarities of the physical reality that make it what it is. So simply operating from one or the other is just not going to work, okay? It's not going to work. It ain't going to work. It's not going to work. One side of your boat going to tip and the other side of it is going to be underwater. Either way you go. It has to be some type of balance. Because if not, it literally harms us. So, I did it again where I clicked out of it. Now, how do we tell the difference between the ego and the soul? Well, looking for y'all, I've been researching this stuff for a minute, and I have some resources to go back into. So give me a second while I get that pulled up. So, moving on, I would like to share some things that could help you distinguish ego from soul or spirit or higher self. Now, I came across this, I think she considers herself an inner peace coach. I had no idea those things exist. I've heard of a life coach, sex coach, all of those things. There are a variety of doulas, just all different types of things. So, one of the things I wanted to do is just, give you an idea, because of course you're like, well, I can listen to self. We kind of talked about what each of the two would what they would sound like, what are the ways they will refer to certain things, right? We talked about that a few minutes ago, but this is like almost somewhat a better understanding of what the two might be saying to you. That means different things. This woman's name is Mary Allen. It does say she is your success and inner peace coach, and she has a beautiful website where she talks about all of those things. But what caught my attention was her sharing ways to distinguish ego from your soul. Now, on Miss Mary's site, she says, since the ego can be sneaky in its expression, it's important to recognize its nature. I've included a list below, which we'll get into in a second. A list below of ego characteristics and soul counterpart. Separation is the common theme to each word set below. The ego strives to keep you separate from the world, separate in relationships, separate from your spirit in its full self-expression, joy, and inner peace. I know this sounds bad, but just hanging there with me. It does this through resistance, restriction, blaming, being self-righteous, and that's mostly what people struggle with, all of us, and being fearful. The ego also expresses itself as neediness, which is a form of separating from self, separating from your power, better yet, believing that you need something over there to complete you. The ego has many faces, all working to keep you separate. And now we'll get into the list of those things that may keep you separate. So, the first on the list is... Boy, I just realized every time I come back, I just keep saying so. Take a shot every time I done said so. A shot of, I don't know, whatever you want to take a shot of, but I'm going to get better with that. The first thing on the list is separation versus connection. So maybe that's I never even thought to think of other, real life examples to use with this, but we'll go over the list and you can kind of look them up yourself, because again, part of practicing what you have learned is looking up a lot of shit that you've heard. Never forget that. So yeah, first on the list, separation versus connection. Next, mind versus heart. Victim versus taking responsibility. We all deal with that. Even if it's not us playing victim, we have someone in our lives that they don't know how to take responsibility for things. Excuses versus results. So ego is going to tell you all the reasons you cannot do something. This is also something we've all dealt with, versus getting the results. And when I say this one should be so relatable for so many people, because so often do we have these challenges almost damn near every day, every single day. And one of the real life examples that's coming to my mind right now is simply just like house chores. Like, maybe I don't have enough time to do them or whatever, versus just the results of it take you 5 minutes to unload the dishwasher, get that shit put back up. You know what I mean? Like the results versus excuses. That's the first one I'm thinking of, probably because I'm at home. But we'll move on down the list. Shoulds versus inspiration. I should be further. I should be doing this. I should be getting this, because that is something else that we all struggle with, feeling like we deserve something. It should already be handed to us. We're overqualified, whatever, when instead it really should put fire under your ass to get there, get whatever, because everything we can obtain anything, we can do whatever we put our minds to. Doesn't mean it's always going to be or end in the result that you are expecting, but you can do it. You literally can do it. Now next, resistance versus acceptance. Another big one. Resisting change versus accepting the change, and accepting and being happy to expect all the different new things that will bring your way. That's a major one that we all struggle with. Restricted versus freedom. that is one that stood out to me, not because I can think of like, oh, you know, actually looking at this, it's like it's the same as the shoulds versus the inspiration, because honestly the resistance and the shoulds are related, because you may resist things that you feel are already like you are already deserving of, or not results, but inspiration and acceptance. You were inspired by the acceptance of what, really analyzing what something could really do for you. Next on the list, restricted versus freedom. And really all these things, I'm just really thinking about them and thinking about how they relate to self or someone else. And restricted versus freedom, you need to free your mind. For me, this is what I think of when I hear that. You need to free your mind and your thoughts and everything of whatever you expect it to happen. Restricted, you stay, you think of it, when I hear restricted or restrict, it's like, okay, I imagine these gates and these things that are supposed to be in this gate because they are not allowed to be outside of that gate. We can't really say that about ourselves, because there's not really much that we have to restrict ourselves from unless they are just not good for you. Next, confusion versus clarity. That was an interesting one because, I just don't get that one, and I really want to look into that some more. So we'll move on to the next one. Suppressed versus fully self-expressed. That's another one we all struggle with. We suppress everything sometimes. That's honestly why so many of us are addicted to social media and what people think about us or whatever, because we only can operate off of other people making us feel good, and that really sucks. So suppressed versus fully self-expressed. To me, fully self-expressed is like, I don't give a what anyone thinks about what I am doing, because I'm doing what makes me happy. That's what I think fully self-expressed is. Worry versus anticipation. Now, those two, I feel like that has something to do with anxiety as well, but our mind is the most powerful thing, and sometimes it talks us out of so much that we didn't even get the chance to be excited about or anticipate, just be anxious and excited for something different, something new. Stuck versus creativity. As a artist, stuck versus creativity. This is one of those things where I don't know if I fully agree with this one, because sometimes you are stuck because you are not inspired. And if you are not inspired, you really can't be creative. So I don't necessarily agree that, stuck is ego and creativity is higher self, because sometimes I don't have anything to create from my higher self. I might enjoy looking at things and that satisfies my higher self, but I do not have, my higher self isn't thinking about physically creating, and that's okay. Stressed versus peace. And maybe, really just looking at this list again, I think it's safe to say that regardless of what ego is telling you, like I said earlier, duality is a thing, and you do need to feel and work through whichever you are feeling. You have to. So don't forget that, and don't necessarily hear these verses and think that, oh, I'm fucked up or something. No, because this is just simply, all of this is just here to show you that we need both. You need both to really just even be motivated. Both have a place in our lives. The biggest thing is how to come out of one or the other to make it all whole. Next, frustrated versus resourceful. Again, something I think everyone deals with, daily. Protection versus vulnerable. Because we all sometimes feel like we need to protect ourselves, but sometimes we do need to protect ourselves because we don't know what these people want. We do not. I may have skipped over one, but stressed versus peace. And this is another one where I think it's, that's where that duality comes in, because sometimes shit just stresses you out and you gotta work through that. All of this stuff, you just gotta work through what you're feeling. And the biggest thing is just being able to analyze it and say, hey, hold on now. Hold on. I hear you, self. But what else you gotta say? Now let me look at this. Now let me get through how I feel about this, and then I can reach peace. So I get that. Next, protection versus vulnerable. I think I did that one. Fear versus love. I don't think that's just like in romantic situations. I think it means, it could be applied to everyday life. Fear versus love. You might have a love for something, but you're afraid of trying new things. God, I did a farmer's market for the first time. And even though it was like, okay, I know it's a community thing, I'm surrounded by people that look like me, it was still something I never did before. And I'm not going to lie, that fear almost overlooked the love and the thought and the want and the need of just like the exposure. And we all deal with that. So next is going to be laziness versus nurturing. That's another one that again, it depends on how you want to apply these words to things or your definitions or how you may define ego and soul now. So if the ego is trying to be lazy and your soul is wanting to be nurturing, that is a tough one. Especially understanding the fact that not everyone is nurturing. And that's in the form of whether it's a business, child, friends, family. Some people just don't know how to be that way. So I can't really say much about that. But next on the list is doubt versus trust. Some of these are just so hard, and that's where the inner battle comes in, man. The inner battle comes in with self. Honestly, the next one is scarcity versus abundance. Shut down versus open. All the words that have to do with ego: laziness, doubt, scarcity, shut down, shame, apprehension, struggle. The soul is saying nurturing, trust, abundance, open, acceptance, courageous, flow. That shit is hard. That shit is hard to work through. But again, if you understand that there is a balance, there's a balance that has to be made. To me, that's where it's like, I'm going to cry through it. I'm going to get through what I got to do. Ego is probably going to be telling me to feel a certain way about these things, but it's on us to decide, do we sit with ego or do we work through how ego is feeling, listen to how ego is feeling, but then just move with grace, onto, nurturing whatever it is that we want, trusting whatever it is we want or where we want to be. As far as abundance, you got to understand where the scarcity to reach the abundance in whichever form you're trying to get the abundance in. Shut down versus open. I am a firm believer in, if I'm gonna cry it, I'm gonna cry it out first, but then I might listen and move forward and be open to whatever it is. You gotta work through that. That's just part of it. And is, as I said earlier, it's like you really just can't have one or the other, because even though soul is operating in higher self, I do think it's very unhealthy to ignore ego and what ego is saying, because sometimes you need to understand why ego is feeling a certain way, as far as moving forward with certain things. And like apprehension versus courageous. Nothing's wrong with, second guessing things a little bit, as long as you act on it. Nothing's wrong with that. Now, Miss Mary Allen has noted, take the first word in each pair, and also I will put the link in the bio for this article or this vlog to Life Coach Mary. But yeah, take the first word in each pair. Perhaps you've already recognized how familiar they are to you, as it is for most human beings. Imagine living your life predominantly from these states of being. So you would just imagine living your life from being frustrated all the time. We know a lot of people that do that. Wouldn't recommend. But imagine your life predominantly from being frustrated all the time. Or a life of separation, shoulds, confusion, restriction, resistance, etc. How would you feel? And she said, yuck, period. Unfortunately, this is how 83% of the population lives. And she actually suggested a book. And the book is Power versus Force by David Hawkins. I have not read that, but I'll definitely check that out. Now, take the second word in each pair. Imagine living a life lived predominantly from these states of being: joy, peace, love, creativity, freedom, and full of self-expression. While it's not the norm of today, because it's not, and then when people actually run into those people that are living from those points of life, y'all call them bougie, white, uppity, all of these things. And that is truly insane. It's insane. But let me go back to Miss Mary. Like she said, while it's not the norm of today, it is possible. Wow. One of my favorite quotes from Les Brown is, "It is possible." Look at your neighbor and tell him it's possible. Best little, it's not even a sermon, but I just say that because he's another, I guess he consider himself a life coach, but love some Les Brown. Do you hear me? If I have to listen to anyone, I'm gonna listen to Les Brown. But yeah, only 17% of the population access this way of being. 17%. And we live in a world full of billions of people. Only 17% get to ever reach this point of peace. Wow. 17%. Hold on. Google. Now we're going to look up how many people are in the world. Live in the United States. There we go. If 5.8 million live in Colorado, I wonder what that percentage is for people that are reached this level of understanding. Right now, that can't be right. Okay, hold on. I put it in the US. We're gonna just put in the world. Mind you, there are so many that are not accounted for at that. So Dr. Google is telling me that there are 5.2 billion people. First of all, this is from 1989, honey. I need to know this year. All right, roughly. Dang, we are really on a decline of humans a little bit, because the original answer it gave me was 2021. And here we are. Baby, let me stop trying to pretend like I know something about this. Y'all, the population right now, for the people that, include themselves on these types of things, because not everybody does and not everyone is accounted for. There are roughly 8 billion people in the world. Only 17% of themselves finally get to a point where they can operate without ego taking over how they operate. That's wild. It's fascinating and wild. Now I'm gonna do it. Let me search it, because I'm not gonna try to do that math. What is 8 billion? I guess it would be divided by 17%. Not that, y'all. Oh, wait a minute. That's so many zeros. Yo, somewhere is like 470 million people, I'm thinking, is what it's telling me. Child, let me go to one of these websites. That can't be the right math, because that ain't right. Ain't no way 17 million people. Gotta figure it out, and I gotta deal with this shit that I deal with every day. Well, I think it is 470 million. Y'all don't quote me, baby. I know how to count money. But look into that. 17%, that's not really a lot. I will be more impressed if it said like 30 and up. But that just lets you know while you come, or it just really lets you know and understand, like, oh wow, okay, I am really, if I get to this certain level of self-discovery or get to a certain place along that journey, I am special a little bit. And I only say you're special a little bit because you woke up. We're still waiting on other people to wake up. So yeah. Wow, that's just crazy. I'm gonna have to do some more research into that, because that just does not seem like a lot. But I will link to this website in the bio so that you guys can use that when you're looking up everything that we talked about today. But please go look into that. The ego and the soul are just two more tools to help you navigate the physical realm. Excuse me. Embracing and mastering them leads to a more empowered state of being and just creating. And not in the artist way, but in your everyday, like creating the life that you dream about, creating the person that you dream about. Understanding those two will help you understand the person that you want to be, or that you truly are, really, if it's already instilled in us. The key is to understand the role of the ego in the physical realm and the ethereal qualities of the soul. The key is to recognize the voices and the characteristics of both, and which, or better yet, when each is required. So yeah, two major keys, I feel like. The healthy human minds, or better yet, a healthy human mind, since we all human, recognizes our separation from others. At the same time, we are part of a much bigger whole. We are connected to everything, and we have the power within us. Literally. Literally, we have it, okay? It's there. I always say this, especially it helped me in my journey, especially during my pregnancy. Our bodies literally already know what to do. They already know what to do. I tell my clients that all the time, especially women who are just nervous about pushing another being through them or out of them. Do you know that all of your organs, not even just your vagina, every organ has a process that detoxes itself. Your body, especially, let's just touch on the example I'm going to use is giving birth. One of the reasons that the medical industry has been getting so much backlash with the different drugs and stuff they give women in the process of giving birth is because these Lord Jesus, I can't think of one. Your epidural, all of these things, they interfere with the body's natural time clock. All of it. Shit, even formula, all of that. It works against what the body already naturally knows how to do. Everything that makes up your body knows exactly what to do without you and without your assistance, if you give it exactly what it needs. Now, if you're not taking care of your body, it's going to be hard to do these things. It's also going to be hard for you to listen to what your soul and your ego are saying, because you're creating these blockages, within self. Physically, y'all, that's not mentally. This shit is physical, because it has an effect on your life, on your outside life. So yeah, a healthy human mind goes from me or us to me and us. That's wholeness. That's considering everything that goes into one. And one is soul. When we balance both ego and soul, we become the individual with the power of the whole. Sounds corny, but again, the science is there. There's studies. Literally, there's so much information on the ego and the soul, or if you want to call it spirit, higher self. There are so many good online resources and books for you to look into. Do that, okay? So you can get to a point where you can understand how to balance, or how to listen to yourself, so that you can bring balance onto yourself. Balance, balance, balance. That's all I can say. That's all I can say for the soul sector today. Balance, balance, balance. Wow. It's already time to jump into the last part of Soul and Grace today. So let's go ahead and hop into Queen. Let me just say, I am really working on getting that Nicki Minaj soundbite for Queen. Until I get it, y'all gonna have to just hear my bad fake Nicki Minaj voice. Queen. That sounds so bad. But let's hop into the Queen section of the show, which is all about operating as a queen and how we keep this queen in damn check, and how do we keep the people around her in check, and how do we keep her world sane and somewhere she can actually operate in as a queen. Now, I really want to know that none of what I just talked about is going to stick with you if you don't find ways to practice analyzing yourself now that you know what signs to look for, or what to listen to from self that shows you what side, like what are you operating as in that moment? Are you operating more as ego, or are you operating more as one, as whole, like a wholesome person? Or are you operating as an individual that only cares about themselves? And I guess I never made that, like I've said multiple times that this podcast is focused on bettering self. It's all about self-love. We all about self over here, point blank period, because that's what you need to understand, know, and master before you date. God, I wish somebody would told so many women that before you date, you need to master self, not master what Ray want for fucking dinner and lunch and all that shit. You need to master self, okay? That kind of got me tight a little bit, but I mean, seriously, stop. You need to master self before you worry about anything else, which is so hard to do sometimes, but you got to. Because that's how you are going to be everything and every person. That's how you be everything, person, place, all of those things. Any battles that will come up. Maybe you don't physically win, but mentally you can fight that shit and you can move past it. So yeah, because of those things, because I want you guys to look into those things, Queen, it's not going to be that long. Actually, it's going to be really, really short. Very, very short. Very, very short. Because I just want you guys to practice that, Again, when we become when we balance both the ego and soul, we become the individual with the power of the whole. With the end goal is wholeness, oneness. The end goal is a light that shines so fucking bright because there's balance that gives us that light. There's balance that gives us that light. So definitely, like I said, links to a couple of my references will be in the bio. Yeah, and before we close out, I did have two ways I thought would be very, two exercises I thought. I dropped my mic. But I do have two exercises that I would love for you guys to practice or just try to incorporate into your everyday life right now. Let us see. Now, these are two simple things. And the reason why it's only two of them is because I feel like it's so... No one needs to tell you to go outside. No one needs to tell you that. If you do need an explanation of why spending time outside and in nature is very important, I do not mind talking about that. It will not be this episode, but if you do, like, future listeners, please let me know, DM me, put it in my suggestion box or send me a little audio or something on Spotify letting me know that you want a breakdown of that, because I just feel like it's self-explanatory. You are just like a plant. Take your ass outside, soak up the sun, drink your water, all of that. Take a walk, all of those things. It's so good for our bodies. So I'm not going to go over the basics, spending time in nature, journaling, meditation. How many times... So many people gonna tell y'all to meditate when really it is simple, but you do need to learn how to meditate. There's plenty of apps like Headspace and Calm if you want like a guided meditation. Honestly, if I don't do solo meditation, I'll do it on the Apple Fitness Plus app. Janelle on there, bomb, love her. And there is another one, but I can't remember, but Janelle stands out the most, and that's who I love to do like a kind of guided meditation with, and she don't talk too much during it or anything. It's perfect. And for my ladies of color, if you just prefer to have someone of color that could do these things with you. Janelle on the Apple Fitness Plus app is great for, like, she does the meditation videos and the yoga videos. So I would definitely check that out. But again, these things are self-explanatory, and I just would imagine, like, it's so repetitive to keep mentioning journaling, meditation, getting outside, exercise, counseling, therapy. Yeah, those things are self-explanatory. Even just different spiritual practices that could teach you or help you learn to listen to self or tune in with higher self. Those things are self-explanatory. So I felt like I did not need to go over them. But the two that I felt like were so good, and, you know, we don't really talk about them enough. The first exercise I want to share is participating in flow activities. And flow activities are for, I don't want to say they're just for creatives, but to sum it all up, the idea is that when we are totally absorbed and engaged by doing something we love, there is no room for bad thoughts. So you can't even think about other things because you just super into whatever you love. Literally love that. Now, before I dive into why, I'll go ahead and list out the other exercise I would like to, or share the other exercise I think would be beneficial. And personally, this is really the number one exercise on my list, but you know, it's almost self-explanatory. But in the days where we have social media and just, you know, we got all the distractions we need right in a little device or tablet, iPad, whatever, it would be limiting ego fueling activities. What is a ego fueling activity that comes to your mind first, future listener? Because I have a few. Now remember, ego is always going to be speaking to self, but in the self that's so independent and above everyone else, or overly deserving says enough. Ego is going to tell you that, right? But when you're limiting ego fueling activities, you just cut all of that out. So limiting, like, the first few things I would think of with that is like avoiding shit that plays on our fears. I just have to let out a big sigh, because again, the first two things that come to mind are like your phone. So limiting your time on your phone, that's just the basic, like that's the first step. But you need to let go of all the things that even bring you fear, anxiety, depression, jealousy, hate, desire. It's another good one. Self-hate. All of those things that make you feel questioning self. If it's not like from a good source, a resourceful source. If it's not from that, it probably is like ego fueling. Literally. The news. I tuned that out a long time ago. And then I remember, because I was pregnant during the pandemic, like, that was something else. I had not watched the news in at least 3 years. Whenever Donald Trump got elected, that's when I stopped watching the news. What was that, 2016? That's when I stopped watching the news, because it's just it's an energy sucker. It's an energy sucker. Sometimes you can't even tell what's real or not, especially once you've gone through so much of this journey, and you're learning to listen to things and how to discern things and all of those things. You just, I don't know what's what. Shit, even as far as Earth being flat or not, I just keep telling people when they want to bring that up, I don't know, because I don't have a rocket. I don't have a rocket. Until I can get a rocket and take my ass up there, I can't talk about those things. And there are so many other things that go on in the world. It's just like, I just don't have any control over that. But if I don't limit myself to seeing those things that fuel the fear, the anxiety, the hate, all those things, then I don't have to worry about that at all. I don't. So avoid anything that's like advertising on, like advertising fear to you. And that comes in so many different forms. Literally so many different forms. One of the things I do right now is like, I have a timer on apps, or I'll happily delete Instagram or whatever, because you can re-download all of that stuff. It's not going anywhere. It'll be there. Ain't shit changing. Blueface ain't do nothing new to Krishan, whatever the fuck y'all be paying attention to on the blogs. But Shade Room ain't posted nothing helpful, beneficial, necessary, but they told you it was Michael Jackson cousin 15th birthday. I don't know, just avoid all of those things, because it just is not, it's not helpful. Honestly, it's not helpful to your soul. It's also not beneficial to your ego. So let that shit go. So again, the 2 exercises that I would love for my future listeners to practice. Really, number 1 is limiting ego fueling activities. Oh, and matter of fact, limit ego fueling people. Yeah, people. Cut them off. Or slowly cut them off. Because they will manipulate you and play on your head too. So, yeah. Leave them alone. Social media, I feel like is the biggest beast. And even if you have friends that are addicted to that, definitely limit them. Limit your time with them, because you really don't have time for the person that is caught up with everything that is going on. And then they don't know what the fuck is going on in their world. Excuse my language, but I have to be real with y'all. Like, you just gotta have to cut them off. Literally, social media itself has been linked to anxiety and depression. Plenty of suicides way too early. Too much mental illness just because you want to keep up with somebody. And if you just can't get past the addiction or whatever, set those timers up that I mentioned in your settings, because at least you need to realize, like, yeah, social media is there, but we don't have to use it. And if we are going to use it, we need to use it against, or not against, but with the things that matter, or keep the end goal in mind when using social media, which most people like me, I am not a big fan of it anymore. I remember creating my Instagram as I think I was a junior in high school doing that, but fast forward to now, shit, my 10-year reunion just passed. That's a long time. That is a long time that social media has been around outside of Facebook. But we just gotta learn to live outside of our phones and outside of the box, because there's, even if it's positive stuff, there are so many bad messages that are being spread to people or from people that we feel that we relate to, but in all actuality, they're kind of just preying on us as consumers, and it's no bueno. So yeah, the first exercise that I would like for you to practice is limit all ego fueling activities and people. Cut their ass off. Cut that shit off. Leave it alone, or limit yourself. And it is going to take time, because, the process is like, oh, I feel like I'm missing something at first, and then the next step or the next part of it is, feeling good because you don't even remember that exists. You've realized, I don't need it. I'm not dependent on it. So yeah, don't be dependent on ego fueling activities and flow activities. Pick up a new flow activity, and not flow like the floor, but flow like FLOW. Find you, if you don't already have something that makes you super happy, whether that is art, whether it's being active, whether it's talking, whatever. Find something, find something and pour yourself into it, or find something that you actually can see yourself doing without thinking. Without thinking or worrying about other things. And because I am a mom, I will just shortly say, like, that is hard. Just getting time to yourself can be hard sometimes, but you can do it. And I do believe most moms have at least 30 minutes to themselves at some point in the day. So what are you going to do with those 30 minutes? I don't know. Figure it out. Let me know how it works out for you. I would love to hear that. I would love to hear how practicing limiting things that feed the ego has worked out for you. I would love to hear how you picked up, or you revived this love for something that, a hobby or something that you loved so dearly, and now you do it to keep a peace of mind. I really would love to hear that. So yeah. Oh my God. We are here. Getting to... Twist my mic a little bit. Can you hear me now? Getting to the end of the show is literally always just pretty bittersweet. On one hand, I am happy to be at the end of the show, but on the other hand, I'm super sad that it's over. Also, on another hand, I'm always like, how is this gonna sound? Hoping that it sounds 100% so far with these new mics, compared to my actual full studio mic. They work pretty well, but sometimes there might be like 5 to 10 seconds of like underwater sound, so bear with it, or fast forward if you do hear it. I am really close to finishing like how I want my setup to be as far as my little area goes, so I can record and use my nice mic. But I love these little wireless mics. I'll probably put a link in the bio for those too, because they are pretty awesome. And honestly, it's like you don't need the full podcast setup for a good episode. Honestly, I've had this shit for at least 4 years, and I've pulled my mic out 30 times before fully having the idea and everything. So I'm grateful for that I never put out no crap. But we here, and again, it's always just bittersweet, because it's like, I don't got nothing else to say to y'all, but also just like, I got another episode down in the book. Soul and Grace is doing this thing. I just am so excited for what I want to bring to this brand and to my future listeners and supporters, literally. And as far as today goes, I hope that today's episode was informative and useful. You go, I guess not go home, because you're probably at home listening to this, but it's all information and stuff that you can use. You go look into it, so it's not like I wasted my time finding the resources and stuff for my future listeners. But yeah, for the first few episodes of the show, I wanted to make sure that these topics were topics that covered the basics of this journey, because once we get into certain things, I don't want to have to cover them again. I want us to listen and be able to have an understanding. Of course, you always go back and check the facts, but I want us to have conversations and we flow. I want to be able to bring on guests and they can just be themselves and we can all just have a good conversation versus constantly having to define certain things, or why are we talking about this? Why is this related to so these topics are important. It's about 5 episodes where we just touch the basics, and then the rest from there is all fun and literally all about self-love, self-guidance, even though we don't have the answers, and just bettering self. It's so many layers to self-discovery. And literally, so when I was taking my notes, I don't know why this came to my mind. And it has nothing to do with me being a mom or having a kid, but more so all to do with the fact that he was so right when he said this. Do y'all remember when my 90s babies, you have seen Shrek. You have seen Shrek, so you need to know what I'm talking about. And it will be quite embarrassing if you do not know what I'm talking about. Literally. Do you remember when Shrek said to Donkey, ogres are like onions? I can't even take myself serious right now, but ogres are like onions because they're like onions because they have layers, many layers. That is exactly us. We are like onions. And actually, if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, we are really like onions, because you know how onions are, they filter things naturally. We do have an internal filter. Are you going to listen to that damn filter or not? Are you going to let the filter do its job or not? That's the one thing. And that just came to me. But yeah, we are really like onions. And discovering yourself is like cutting to that center of that fucking onion. The shadow work to get into to knowing self is literally many layers. Many layers. I personally do not. Some of the things that will be shared on Soul and Grace will kind of have some things to do with shadow work, but because I do believe that is something like no one can really walk you through the shadow work. Now, these first 5 episodes will help you be able to acknowledge different areas of the shadow work and how to process them, but I don't really touch on that because while I am a healer in my own sense, I don't really feel that, I do not really feel that is my duty, let alone really anyone outside of self to kind of walk you through the shadow work, because it's not going to make sense to anyone else but you. So yeah, we'll never touch on that. I'll share some of these exercises definitely would be considered shadow work. I feel like that's just the trendy thing now, but that's not what we're going to focus on. Mostly we'll always focus on things in from a light perspective, as far as we are working on just building or powering this blinding bright light that is coming from within. That's all Soul and Grace is for, but again, we need to be able to understand the layers so that we can navigate through this thing called life. And that's what we'll do together. Soul and Grace is a lot closer than you think. We're going to figure this out together. I'll say that one more time. Together we'll figure it out. But until next time, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next Sunday at 7.